Was those one of those life and death moments for HomeLane?
At that time, we had celebrated it, cutting $1 million cake. Currently, we are doing roughly companies' net promoter score being negative, forget about being minus 26. Like, are we even capable of running a business like? Because we were not making money on the projects that we were delivering. People were on very, very rationalized salaries. We were losing money in doing the thanda. I was telling him that, I'm looking at starting something of my own. And I think his first response was, "You're crazy. Like, why would you leave Amazon right now?" They are not the 21, 23, 25-year-old upstarts who are kind of out there to try and prove someone wrong. And the first change that we did was using philosophy which we call the limited catalog philosophy, where we really trim down our overall offerings to the customer. From offering, dolphin-shaped false ceilings and, piano-shaped beds, we said nothing doing. We will only do modular furniture. I've known Shizan for a few months less than I've known.
Less, sorry. My bad.
You'll get me killed one way or the other.
And this was not like a rip-off of like a playbook that existed in the West.
Not at all. There was actually no benchmark.
Right.
What was the benchmark? The only other benchmark was one other company who had started that same year. Problem is that we are doing so many orders and we don't know how to execute them. He said he is 100% lying. I know that you asked me if there's something I can talk about. I will. I mean, there's nothing which is it's good to know, right?
And I think like they say, entrepreneurship in itself is a very, very lonely journey.
Right.
Especially when you're at the top.
The most boring office I'd ever been to.
Oh, really?
In my life.
Why? At the end of the day, when you're finally on your deathbed, it's the experiences that come back. You'll not think about how much money you ended up spending to have that experience.
Correct.
That will never come back to you.
Yes.
How did Srikanth woo you into this? How did that happen?
Sleight of hand.
Hi Tanuj, how are you feeling today?
Very good. Thanks for having me for your podcast, Gautam. Very excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Builders of Bharat. And the first question that I have before we dwell into the success of HomeLane and the magnanimous business that it has become is let's dwell a little bit into your own journey. So what was your background? What was your personal journey? And how did HomeLane happen to you?
Sure. So I've had a bit of a journey through India growing up. My early years I spent in Jamshedpur. Started there and moved to Patna, Calcutta, Lucknow. Went to school in all these four cities. So a little bit of the eastern part of the country. And then for college, I decided to go to St. Stephen's College, which is a college in Delhi, to study math. I was just discussing with a friend of mine that out of the 41 students in my class in that section, 38 of them went into engineering. And three of us went to the same college and went to the same course. So nice. The three of us studied together. 3 years in St. Stephen's College. Spent a lot of time not in the classroom. a lot of it was spent in society work, in the students' union. We had St. Stephen's is generally known for a lot of the other activities it does, including getting people in for conversations. We didn't have such well done podcasts, but we used to do our getting people to come in and speak and talk about what their lives have been. Did that for 3 years. And after 3 years, like a good graduate, I actually had no idea about what I had to do next or wanted to do next.
I think that's the story with 99% of our population, especially people coming out of engineering.
Yeah, I know it's but at least when you're coming out of engineering, there are some clear, jobs and avenues that are available. Coming out of a liberal arts college, I think at that time, you could either go and do higher studies, which is you go and do a master's in math or economics, or you apply for MBA, and there was a small set of companies who would come and recruit. You had your HUL used to come and a few others. So that year, actually, we had McKinsey coming in to recruit for the McKinsey Knowledge Center. So they were setting up an analytics team within the company. and they were looking for some people. I frankly I didn't have too many other things that I was looking at doing after college. So I remember distinctly going for that, I don't know, long day of interviews. And I really liked the way sort of they were thinking about building the team. I knew a little bit about McKinsey from before. Decided to join them. I was there for 4 years, helping build their analytics team. It was 4 fabulous years, lots of travel, but also I think it just exposed me to a world where there are just so many ways you can actually build a career. It doesn't have to be, any one set way of, okay, you need to go and, be a coder for 4 years, or you need to go and be working in an oil rig for 3 years to be able to sort of earn your stripes. That was incredible. I think those 4 years were very diverse. Spent a lot of time building teams, but also spent a lot of time solving problems. And post that, I moved over to the consulting side at McKinsey itself, but I moved to South Africa.
Oh,
so I was doing some projects.
So which year was this?
2004 to 2008, I was at the McKinsey Knowledge Center. 2008 to 2010, I moved to Joburg, and that was an incredible experience. I think more from a personal standpoint, there was just so much to see, so much to experience. It's not a country that you would typically have on a regular career track, so to say.
Correct.
Was blessed to have some great colleagues from all around the world. Spent 2 years there, but I think by the end of that 6-year journey at McKinsey, I started feeling like I wanted to do something different. I felt like it was a little bit of a bubble. It was such a great learning experience. I had the opportunity to meet some incredible people, including leaders who were clients, who were building great companies. And maybe there's a little bit of FOMO that kicked in over there, saying that instead of serving some of these clients, what would it be like if you would actually be a part of one of these organizations and really own the outcomes coming from there.
Interesting. So, at least from your experience of McKinsey, was there one or two interesting things that sort of drove you in this direction? Maybe a mentor, because I've heard a lot of people speak very highly about their experience at McKinsey. Yeah. I think if anybody, Shantanu speaks very highly, and he's got a lot of folks from McKinsey on his podcast. Right. So do you have some memories or something that happened at McKinsey that might have?
Oh, well, it was incredible. I think you had mentors in different forms at different times at your time at the firm. At least for me, I still remember that the first team that I joined, it was there were 4 people in the team. And the center was being led by Nitin Seth, who now heads Incedo. He's a co-founder and CEO of Incedo. It's a firm based in the US. And I think the exposure to taking decisions where there is risk involved, the ability to back yourself and make decisions that maybe most people will not really be happy about, but you think it's the right thing to do, so you go and do it. I think I picked up a lot of it from Nitin during those years, in addition to the people who I was working with. But I think he was really one of those mentors, and I think he's continued to stay a very, very important mentor, and how I've been thinking about my career. But I think post that, there were a couple of others. There were a couple of people in South Africa who, just imagine, you're moving to a new country, you're moving to Joburg. It was one of the very few places where I actually didn't have relatives. It's very unusual for an Indian to move to any city. And I'm sure there would have been if I had searched even harder, but there weren't. So there were a couple of colleagues who were like family, and I spent so much time with them, learning from them, figuring out not just how to build a career and do better at a client side, but to live independently in a country where you might not have the same safety sort of net. And when I say safety, I think I found Joburg extremely safe. But when I'm saying safety net, I meant from a social safety net standpoint and ability to get along with people.
Interesting.
And one other mentor, which I think I should call out, was Pramath, who I never overlapped with at McKinsey, but he's related to me, and he was at McKinsey. He was one of the first few members of the India office at McKinsey as well.
Nice.
I think throughout the last 10, 15 years, I've had a relationship with him which has not been been one of, okay, I only need Gyan so I can reach out to him. I think depending on the situation I'm in, I can reach out to him as a friend, as somebody who has, consulted great companies before, but also somebody who can give me sort of sane advice. So
and those kind of people are really, really important also. And I think, like they say, entrepreneurship in itself is a very, very lonely journey.
Right.
Especially, when you're at the top. If you don't have people like these supporting you, then it makes things much, much harder.
So true.
So shout out to Pramod.
So anyway, so that was McKinsey. But I think at the end of the 6 years, I was like, I need to take a year out. I think more than anything else, I felt like I needed a reset. I was not very sure what I wanted to do next.
Interesting. So you took a year off. So between McKinsey and HomeLane.
Yes, I took a year out. No, actually, so I did McKinsey.
Oh, not HomeLane. My bad.
SkillKindle.
Yeah. Right.
So, but I took a year out. I went to business school. I was at INSEAD for a year.
Right. Correct.
That was also a great sort of experience, spending time in Singapore and France. And it was a very different mindset because I remember that there were a lot of my classmates who were coming in and they knew exactly what they wanted to do after business school. Like many of them were coming from industry, they wanted to move to consulting. Many of them who came from consulting were probably going back to consulting because your MBA gets paid for if you go back to consulting in many of these companies. And I think there were some of us who were, I guess, a little, as usual, but this seems to be a common trend with me, like being a little bit clueless in that kind of education. But I felt that, if I'd taken that year out, it was worth doing something different after business school. I started working on some ideas with some friends in business school. And by the end of it, I'd figured that I wanted to come back to India and start. This is in 2011.
Okay.
And that's when we decided to start SkillKindle. SkillKindle, we felt, I think the problem statement with SkillKindle was just having gone through the last 5-6 years of, using skill sets to be able to solve problems. We felt that a lot of skills that you need to be a good photographer, to be a good analyst, to be a good, anything, any of these things. You can't necessarily only go to college to learn these things. You have to be able to learn them in the real world as well.
Correct.
And there are so many people who know how to teach these skills. So is there a way of bringing them together? And the inspiration for us was a company called Skillshare in the US.
Yes.
Actually, they were really, really good at what they were doing. And I felt that, if this is possible to do in India, but it'll need a slightly different way of operating because the markets are very different. And I learned that over the next 3 years. So started SkillKindle. I was supposed to start with...
you had other co-founders?
I was going to talk about that. I was supposed to start with a classmate of mine from business school. He was a Luxembourgish guy, and the two of us had spent a lot of time thinking through the problem, etc. But I think at some point he felt that he did not want to jump into entrepreneurship at that time, and I think the thought of coming to India and startup was a little too extreme, even though he was a big fan of India, etc. So he said, you know what, I think I'm going to let this one be. So it was a little bit of a setback to me, but I think I was so much in the zone that I said, okay, fine, we'll go back and we'll try and figure out what to do. For the first 7 to 8 months, I actually did not have a co-founder.
Interesting.
Started myself.
You began anyway. Started. And we started aggregating classes. We found experts who were teaching different things, whether it's photography, financial, modeling. I used to do classes on, modeling and Excel modeling, etc. myself. Nice.
We found people who could teach, communication, and we organized these workshops. We had folks who were really well trained in dance, teaching folks, and this was for adults. This was not for kids.
Interesting. And this was all mostly offline.
This was all offline. Because I mean, MOOCs was just picking up, but frankly, there were not too many people who would, and then internet bandwidth was patchy. You could not
Correct.
do this through.
Yeah. So which is why I find this very interesting. So you were very, very early in the game in some sense. Yeah.
So we said, offline, let's do this offline. Let's have these classes. We started doing them in Delhi, and some of the classes were phenomenal in terms of just subscribership. But I tell you, the one class, whenever I'm sure you've seen this as well, when you're working on an idea or on a business, it's the unlikeliest of things that come and kind of bail you out.
Correct.
Unlikeliest.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm going to ask you what yours was, but for me, there was a class run by a couple of mixologists who would
Drink mixology, that's what you mean.
Mixologists.
Wow.
So they were people who would actually they were people who would be behind bars and not behind bars.
Yeah. Let's please clarify. Yes. Yeah, for a second I was taken aback. I'm like, did I get this wrong? Okay.
That's not, jailbreak is not a skill.
Yeah, behind bars at restaurants. Let's clarify.
and but they were also, I found out that they were doing these training sessions for early stage bartenders in some localities in Delhi.
Interesting.
And we reached out to them saying, we wanted to do there are some people who are interested in learning how to do cocktail mixing. Would you do a session? He was like, yeah, sure. And these two gentlemen are now like super famous, both of them. These two gentlemen said, fine, we'll do a class. So we put up a class on SkillKindle. There were no rules around, alcohol and this and that. We said, just put it. We'll put it on the website.
If it works, then we'll figure it out.
We'll put it. It said cocktail mixing session, 1,500 rupees for a 1.5 hour session. You come and learn how to make 6 cocktails. And, there are these two mixologists who are there. And we had to do some work in, marketing them properly, etc. Right. Those sessions were sold out in half a day.
Wow.
Sessions would take us like weeks and weeks to fill up. Wow. Half a day. And obviously a lot of my friends signed up, but soon after that, the word started spreading and these classes used to be full. And
nice.
I think for me, that was interesting because it was a little bit of bittersweet.
Why bittersweet?
It was sweet because, any product line that works, you want to really double down on it and build it out.
It's basically initial proof of product market fit.
Exactly.
Bitter, why?
Bitter because I felt that, is this moving away to, will this be something I'll be able to scale beyond the set of people who we are being able to do this for? I think there was a question, and frankly, those are, if I talk about things that I would have maybe done differently if I were to go back in time, I was still trying to grasp how much of breadth versus how much of depth we should have gone with. Maybe we should have gone for more depth and stuck with this conviction saying these are the 3 or 4 classes that are working really well. Let's just go and build these out really well. But because, there were questions around TAM. I didn't really know the term TAM that time. But I knew that, you need to have a large enough market to be able to scale this business. I felt, this is one, but I need to have like 10 or 15 other categories. There were some other categories which were doing well, but slowly and steadily I started noticing that they are all the categories which are more social skills related were doing much better. Professional skills, it was taking us a lot of effort to fill up classes. And the more we, peeled the layers of the onion, we figured that at least that time in India, nobody really wants to learn. Nobody is going to come and sign up for a course for the sake of learning a skill.
Right.
They want certification.
Correct. I think this was also the work. I like to classify most startups and the startup conversations into pre-Flipkart era and post-Flipkart era to some extent, right? So, which basically means that startup wasn't really a fancy term then. Like it was more, I think, before some of these major exits, it was still something that people were very unsure of, and families would generally be, repulsive to some extent and saying, like how you said, go through the journey, who will give girl to you later, and all of these marriage related conversations would happen. But now, thanks to Shark Tank and a lot of other things that have happened, it's flipped. Yeah, but around that time, I don't think you would have had the necessary ecosystem to probably even guide you with some of the questions that you might have had.
Yeah, I feel so. I think about it. I don't think about it that often, but when I think about it, I think about it for quite some time in terms of, what was going on in my mind during those 3 years, because I don't think it was easy. Like it's not easy for any entrepreneur, but there was a question around, should we have pivoted faster into doing more certification led training programs? Would that have maybe worked better? On the social skills side, you could have actually chosen that as a niche and built it out. Frankly, even today, actually, there is no company at scale who's doing the social
Correct.
skills.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
There isn't. Yeah. And, we've spoken to a lot of people who started businesses in the space as well. And the problem is the same. There is a big conflict, because when you have star trainers, it's not very different from EdTech.
Correct.
When you have star trainers who are really good, I don't know, photographers, dancers, etc., they will at some point start treating you as competition.
Right.
Because they want to create a pull so that, they'll be able to get folks themselves.
Yes.
And you can do things to be able to make them, brand them better, etc. But the value add did not seem to be that much. So at some point we said, let's not focus on this. We tried to then also try and do some online courses.
Interesting.
We did some online courses. We opened up Mumbai and Bangalore. We also had 2 partners, one in Singapore and one in Joburg, who said, we're going to try and build, because I think a lot of people found the concept very interesting.
So you were actually parallelly building in Joburg as well?
Yes,
with a partner?
Actually, there was a friend of mine from Joburg.
Okay.
She said that she wanted to set up SkillKindle. So we set up a partnership or whatever. And she started building over there. And actually, she also got some traction. Even the Singapore team got some traction. Singapore was done through us,
nice.
So to say. But it was the first real learning of entrepreneurship to me was, this, I heard maybe Kunal Shah talk about it a few days back, which is that when you're starting a business, after the first bit of iterating, etc., I also agree that it's much better to be a single blade knife than to try and be a Swiss Army knife, because then you're really not going to be able to solve any one person's problem really, really well.
True. So in that journey, were you funded? We did.
We raised an angel round from a seed round from IIM Ahmedabad. They had a Center for Incubation, CIIE.
Correct.
So we participated in this Economic Times Power of Ideas. There used to be this annual
I've seen
that
them,
used to happen. So we were one of the winners for the Economic Times Power of Ideas.
Nice.
And CIA put in some money. I also had 2 very close friends who angel funded us for the first 1.5 years or so of the business. We ran SkillKindle for almost 3 years. And at some point, I think we were making sure that we are not burning. We're kind of making as much as we are spending. But the size of the business was so small, and there were just so many things that we had gotten involved in, that we were sure that we had to focus on one of them and build them really well. That is also the time where we started seeing the mobile first approach starting to become very, very omnipresent. 2014,
14ish,
14.
Yeah.
And one idea was, can we actually convert this to an online content sort of platform where we can have these certifications, train folks, etc. But I think that was the second piece where I sort of learned a little bit more about myself, that I think at that stage I had already I was very tired. I was depleted in terms of energy, and there wasn't enough money, but I think we would have been able to raise more. Frankly, I think we would have been able to raise more money because there was some proof of concept in some of the things that we had done. And I was probably tired because within the first 8 months to 10 months, when I did not have a co-founder like partner available, I think there were a lot of things that we set off trying to do, which took a lot of effort. Then I had the privilege of having Amit, who joined us as our CTO. and who I really believe was a co-founder for me and to me. While we were building together, it would require a lot more time, the next 4, 5, 6 years, to be able to take this into
See
something
significant
large.
scale.
And maybe we were just carrying too much of emotional baggage to be able to take this to somewhere great. I think my email to the MBA loans folks also started playing a role, because that 1.5 years I had taken an extension to get another 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So there were some of those things which were, by the way, not minor considerations. I know that, these problems, when we're talking about the passion of entrepreneurship and how, you can't have any plan B, and, you'll always find a means to be able to do whatever. I'm frankly not the biggest believer in that kind of rubbish. I do think that you have to be practical in life at some points. You have to choose when you have to be practical and when you have to be madly passionate.
Correct.
And at that time, I think I had to be practical, saying that, I need to be able to, live to fight another day. I would rather that we wind this down and I take that year out, or I take some time out to figure out what I would want to do. I think there were a lot of learnings as well in terms of just, what I should be doing next. Decided to take that year out and joined Amazon. But by the 5th, 6th month, okay, so life event had happened right before this.
Marriage.
I also
let me
got,
guess.
yeah. So I met Tanvi, who I then got married to, and Tanvi and I got engaged around that time. I also remember thinking that, and we were getting married in December that year, the year I had joined Amazon.
Nice.
So while all the 3 things that I took away from Amazon were very important, by the 3rd, 4th month, I was quite sure that this is not going to last. I mean, I will not last over here. Amazon will last, obviously, but I will definitely not, and I'll get kicked out at some point because I'm not going to be a great fit over here. But anyway, I think it was important that I had a job at least till the time I got married. And once
that's a nice way to put it. Let it happen once, then we'll figure out.
Yes. So 6th of December we got married, and in December, January, I met Shrikant. And Rama, who is Shrikant's co-founder. In February, I told Amazon that I'm going to be moving on. So it had been 2 months after the marriage, so it seemed like a safe time to do it. And I think that's when the HomeLane journey began. But I do think there are just so many things over the last 9 years of building HomeLane that I look back at on how Amazon was run. I'm not sure how it is run now. I'm sure there are differences. But I think the maniacal focus on, getting it right from a customer backwards approach, being really analytical about the decisions that you're taking, but not so analytical that you're waiting for 100% data proof to be able to make a decision.
Right.
I think those are insisting on high standards, which is typically in conflict with empathy in many places, because,
True.
you can come across to be, if you go beyond the limit.
Right.
But I think that it was a short stint, but it defined a lot of how I landed up being, in addition to the SkillKindle journey over the last 9 years.
No, interesting. So what did Shrikant say to you that that's more interesting to know?
Yes.
That you decided to skip Amazon, took the risk of taking this decision, not just taking the decision, but telling your wife 2 months after marriage. And this it would still be a startup conversation. I understand Shrikant already came from a serial entrepreneurship background. He'd sold a business already.
Sleight of hand. Kidding. So what happened was that, as I said, sometime during the Amazon stint, I felt like I wanted to get back to starting up again. In fact, I was sort of toying with some ideas. I was meeting some people. One of the people who I met was somebody at one of the venture capital firms which invested in HomeLane, but I didn't know that they were
investors
yet. But I'd spoken to somebody over there because I was also in touch with him when I was building SkillKindle. I was telling him that, I'm looking at starting something of my own. And I think his first response was, "You're crazy. Like, why would you leave Amazon right now?" And this person was a hardcore technologist. And his point was that you really need to have a very strong reason. I said, I was telling myself in my mind, I've heard this so many times now from people right before a decision that I need to go past it and they're going to test it a little bit. But he said, if you're looking to start up and, you have ideas, etc., I think you should meet one particular person, one team. I think you'll really enjoy working with them. They've just started up and they've got the right mix of, they want to do tech, ops, business, but they're still trying to build their early team. I said, yeah, I'm not sure. That sounds exciting. I would pretty much prefer starting something by myself, spend some time finding the right co-founder. And I knew that, I felt a lot more confident now having gone through burnt my hands with one of them and having gone through Amazon. But he said,
I don't think, sorry to cut you, I don't think you burnt your hands there at all, because without that, like we spoke, in hindsight, none of the other things would have happened.
That's true.
And it's okay. I think failure is not spoken about or not celebrated enough, also in my opinion.
Right.
I think it needs to be.
No, it should be. I don't think that experience is, as I said, I don't regret any experience. And I think that is a very critical part of, me wanting to continue to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I don't think I would have wanted to do that if I hadn't done the SkillKindle journey. Anyway, so he said, why don't you go and meet these guys? I said, okay. So I Googled them. I said, who are these people? I don't know them. I've not studied with any of them. I've not worked with any of them. Forget all of that. I actually don't know about them. But I said, okay, anyway, 5 o'clock I was finishing work every day. So one day I said, maybe 5 o'clock I'll finish and I'll go and meet these guys. And I went and met Rama, who was Shrikant's co-founder, at their office in Richmond Town. First place I landed up reaching was actually their experience center. The experience center was closed that time for some reason. So then we said, no, you need to go to the office. So the guard told me to go to the office, and I distinctly remember I was in my black i10, which my younger brother had handed it down to me. Right? My younger brother was at McKinsey as well for the longest time.
Nice, interesting.
And he had gone off and he had left his car behind, and I had, like a good elder brother, I had taken the car, right? So I remember that vividly. The drive went up, and 3 recollections of that meeting. First one, Shrikant wasn't there for that meeting, but the first one was I entered the office and it looked like the most boring office I had ever been to.
Oh, really?
In my life.
Why?
It was just like white and a little bit of green here and there. It really, you couldn't really figure. And I was expecting, this is an interior design company, so this is going to be a very fancy office, or even if it's not fancy, very aesthetically decorated, etc. Yeah. We know. Yeah. And now, we need to invite you to our current office. You'll be like, what? Nothing has changed because our office is nothing like our experience centers.
Right.
It's absolutely Spartan. Functional. We don't believe that putting money into building fancy offices is the best use of capital, but that's for another day.
Right.
Anyway, we went over there. I had my first conversations with Rama and the team, and I think one was the office. The second thing which struck me was, I think there was a sense of authenticity in the conversations. And I can say that for my conversations that I then had with Shrikant and other people on the team, so to say that, these were people who are not, and again, not being judgmental, they are not the 21, 23, 25-year-old upstarts who are kind of out there to try and prove someone wrong. I think they'd already gone past that journey in their respective careers. And I found that comforting because, if you really want to think about building something with somebody, you need to make sure that, there's no unnecessary insecurities around you already. So that's the second thing. The authenticity is something which I really liked. And third one was the business problem. The piece around the business problem which I found most intriguing was when I met Shrikant, which is the meeting after that. So I had a meeting with him, and I remember him telling me that, I said, so, okay, what is the biggest problem that like you are looking to plug as far as HomeLane is concerned? Because it's already been 6 months. From what I understand, we are doing reasonably well. So am I even needed over here, so to say? So his point was, the problem is that we are doing so many orders and we don't know how to execute them. I said, he is 100% lying.
What a problem to have.
Yeah, it's not possible. I mean, an entrepreneur tells you that, that like 9 out of 10 times they are trying to, I think, yeah, buy. Is he trying to fleece me or what? I said, nahi ho sakta. It's not possible. It's not possible. He says, no, and he explained. He said, you know what, we book orders, we collect 10%. And after that, the design work starts, etc. But contrary to what we had expected, where we will be a viable alternative to the unorganized sector, the current experience that our customers are getting is actually not very different. It's just that we are looking very white gloved and everything, but things are breaking, and projects are not going through the entire cycle. Customers are not very happy, and we are not being able to run it. I spent a little bit more time with the two of them, and it is actually true that we were doing almost 2.5 crores of order book a month that time. This is in the 6th month of the company.
Wow.
I mean, it was not normal, at least from my standpoint.
Right. And this was also still, again, like I said, to 2014-15,
right? So 2.5 crores of order book. So clearly the sales engine was working, the marketing engine was working. On design and ops, I think everybody was learning, because it takes time for an order to come up for execution. So the team was really building, muscle memory and strength to do things well. There were a few other parts of the problem, but anyway, I felt that, large market, you need to solve quite a few problems to be able to get this right.
And this was not like a rip-off of like a playbook that existed in the West.
Not at all.
That's important.
There was actually no benchmark.
Right.
What was the benchmark? The only other benchmark was one other company who had started that same year, a few months either before or after. It was called Livspace. And it had started some 2.5 kilometers away from the HomeLane office.
Really? Okay.
I mean, it was bizarre.
Something to do with the area for all the prop tech.
It was bizarre. It was really, really bizarre. And that conversation, obviously, all those things happened. And I think at some point over the next 1 month or so, I spent a lot of time with Rama, with Shrikant, and it seemed like, this is something that could be built really well. I think the question was, is that where I wanted to spend my time?
Correct.
And I think at some point, that's when I also got a little bit more, I found out a little bit more about, what Shrikant's background was in terms of being able to operate businesses. The last exit, also spoke to some people about, what was the experience like, etc. And I think it just seemed like he seemed like somebody who would have the right balance of being able to, should I say guide or mentor, or should I say partner? It could be any of those words, but because frankly, that's how he came across. I don't think he ever comes across as somebody who wants to kind of mentor you. He comes across as a friend, he comes across as a partner. And I think that's credit to him, and he's able to do it with anybody who he works with. I really, really liked the fact that, I'd have the space to operate on my own. But I also liked the fact that he had gone through these battle scars, and he had these battle scars from the last 15, 20 years of being an entrepreneur. And, you could only learn. And what is the worst case? The worst case is that, in 6 months from now, you don't like what you're doing, you go back and you build something of your own. So I did think about the plan B. This was one of the few places where I said, because when you're entering something that early and in your mind, you're thinking about building something of your own, it's not, your ego also needs to kind of be given due attention.
Correct.
And the ego was that, maybe I should have done something by myself. So I said, let's give it 6 months and see how it goes. But it's one of those things which I've felt in parts of my life where once I get into something and I know that it's meaningfully challenging enough and that there is something that we can build in a large sort of way, I do immerse myself in it and I really started enjoying myself. So that's the journey of starting
You've
up.
immersed yourself enough to sort of go from being one of the first core team members to being elevated as the co-founder. So that's a lot of immersion there, and that's a lot of commitment also. So what happened? Like it's 9th, 10th year going now. Probably.
Yes, 10th
Next year will be 10.
No, we just completed 10 years as HomeLane.
No, your
months
journey
back.
itself is
Mine is 9 years and 6 months. So it's
and also like off camera, like you were saying, you've known Srikanth for a couple months or a few months more than
I've known Srikanth for a few months less than I've known.
Less, sorry.
You'll get me killed one way or the other. No, but frankly, I think the journey was the following. I know that you asked me if there's something I can talk about. I will. I mean, there's nothing which is. It's good to know, right? We had 2015 was the first full year where HomeLane ran. We were doing really well on top line. And when I say top line, I mean order book. We were getting a lot of orders in. We had expanded to 4 or 5 cities.
Can you give numbers also?
I remember in August 2015, we had done 6 crores of order book. We were at that time we had celebrated it cutting $1 million cake. I remember that as well. It was a big chocolate cake with a $60 with a million $60 with $1 million on it, and that was the scale. Doing about 6 crores. Currently, we are doing roughly 110, 115 crores a month. That's what the difference is, so to say. So at 6 crores, anyway, the business was going well, but the order book growth was inversely proportional to the customer satisfaction scores. Inversely proportional. There was a stage in 2015 where our net promoter score was minus 26.
Oh, wow.
Frankly, I don't think any of us had seen a company's net promoter score being negative, forget about being minus 26. I think companies who were sensible stopped calculating NPS when it started becoming negative. But we had these scores available, so we were and everybody wanted to be analytical. So it's minus 26. Hey, you're minus 26. How are you like this? Is this even worth, are we even capable of running a business like this?
No. Explain to me, how can there be a business that's minus 26 and you are also growing? We
were growing because
what does that mean? Because
the two things happen. One, when an order comes in, it takes 3 to 4 months for it to convert into a completed project. So the
feedback loop also is larger.
It's longer. Or maybe the sales team was very good. So it could have been any of those, right? I would choose to believe it was the second. However, the customer satisfaction was hurting us, but that was not the only problem. The problem also was cash burn, because we were not making money on the projects that we were delivering. There were so many projects where we had underquoted on the project because we did not have the nitty-gritty details available. We had not created a proper pricing software. I mean, you don't do all of that in the first few days of building a company. You go step by step. But many of these things were so essential to building a business in the home interior space. And frankly, we were all using a combination of spreadsheets and this and that to be able to do it. And there were places where we were probably not even recovering gross margins. We were we might have been negative gross margin on some projects, because that's how, scale had taken over, and everybody was incentivized on, grow, because, you had money in the bank, you had, you got some marquee investors in the cap table. You were not really worried.
Raised by then?
About $4 million.
$4 million, that was Series A.
Series A. $4 million. So it was a lot of it. That time it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And and all the money was being burnt on projects. It's not like, I just want to go back to, the piece around the office. The office was reflective of what the frugal mindset has been at HomeLane since then till now. We will not be, you will not see us typically being very, very flamboyant in terms of, spends, etc. on any part of the internal business. At least that's what we believe. That's what we see. So it was not like we were spending money in, building beautiful offices for ourselves, etc. Or, somebody was taking a lot of money. People were on very, very rationalized salaries. We were losing money in doing the dhanda. Like we were running a cash burning dhanda, which to us was quite, it was traumatic, right? I mean, what do you do? Slowly and steadily, we started figuring out what the problem was. I think the two biggest problems was, one, we were being the Swiss Army knife. Trying to be everything to everyone, trying to pander to every customer's request of all forms of customization. And in such a case, A, you will always dissatisfy the customer. B, if every project is unique, how will you ever have any form of pricing? How will you have any form of predictability around what I should procure, when I should procure? So actually, it was just because we are an interior design company does not mean you need to be you need to have unlimited choices for the customer, because actually you're doing them a disservice by offering stuff and then not delivering it. So that was point number one. The second piece that at least we felt we were not getting right is we had expanded into like 4 or 5 cities by that time. And all the mindset was on how do I get the order booking? Damn the CAC. It doesn't matter. Like, pump money into marketing as much as you can. Marketing CAC was through the roof. We were winning orders, obviously, but we did not have the ability to design properly. We were not being able to coach and train people. Our project managers were struggling because every project was new to them. So they were like, what do I do with these parts? Like, where am I supposed to put them? And while I might be exaggerating a little bit of it, it was not very far from the truth. That's actually what it felt like. By 2016, early 2016, mid 2016, we knew that, things had to change. And the first change that we did was using a philosophy which we call the limited catalog philosophy, where we really trimmed down our overall offerings to the customer from offering, dolphin shaped false ceilings and, piano shaped beds. We said nothing doing. We will only do modular furniture. We will not offer any services to customers. If customers come to us and ask us to do their false ceiling, we will say no. So the sales team obviously got super irritated with us. Like, you guys only all know how to spoil the business. I mean, and we were like, but you all are closing the orders, but somebody else is not being able to deliver.
Correct.
So their question was, what do we do with the customer? Like, what do you expect? I said, don't take the order. It was sacrilege.
That's, very, very tough.
How do you not take an order? And their point is that, my incentives are based on this. I'm a growth company. Anyways, but we took that call and we took it really hard. It was not, let's try and transition out in 6 months and this and that. Day one, it was realized, whatever, or day one, we decided. By day two, we had said, okay, remove everything else from the quoting list. Alongside that, we launched some softwares, etc., which we built really, really quickly in the company to be able to price better. So that took care of, are we quoting and offering the right things, and are we pricing them right? Because if you can't price them right, you can't build a business.
Correct.
So that was number one. Second thing that I think happened was there were also some team changes that I think Shrikant felt
management.
From a top management standpoint. And I think Shrikant's point, and in general, the point for the top management team was we will have to choose the approach that we want to take to build this out over the next many years. There were some folks who were more aligned to the approach, and there were some folks who were less aligned to the approach. It seemed like as good a time for all the stakeholders to take a call saying, do I want to run with this mandate over the next few years or do I not? And there was a reshuffle that happened in the top management team. We had the opportunity, being 2 years into the company, to reset the wheel a little bit. We raised a difficult Series B round during that time.
What was the raise?
It was roughly $6 million.
That was a difficult one, considering your Series A was 4.
And 2016 was a very, very tough year from a funding standpoint. It was not an easy year. It was not like 2015. Let me just put it that way. So I think that is when, we figured out
This was one of those life and death moments for HomeLane.
it was pretty close to it. It was pretty close to it.
Stock management, rejig, I think.
Not enough money in the bank that time. Changes to the org, but also changes to the operating model. So it was not just that, we were changing the operating model. Our sales teams had to be sort of rewired. One fine day after raising the round, we actually put our foot down. In fact, Shrikant actually said, he told me that, we were spending some, I don't remember how much it must have been about 1 crore or 75 lakhs to 1 crore a month on marketing. And he said, okay, you know what, why don't you do something? You cut this budget down to 30 lakhs, 40% of the total amount. I'm like, yeah, sure. And frankly, I mean, everybody knew that we had to do it, but somebody had to call it out and say that, hey, you know what, stop.
Right.
And I think that to us was the war cry. For the next 3 or 4 years, I think we went hammer and tongs on just cleaning up the operating model for the company. And this was not the sexy stuff of, going and doing massive acquisitions or, talking about some, really like, getting super expensive folks onto the team who could, go and build maybe not AI ML products because that's right now. This was really about going in every day, fixing parts of the problem, taking those hard decisions. We loved it. Yes. I think that is where we thrived. I mean, and, today if somebody asks me, what we do well and what we don't, there are many things that we don't do well. I think many times we don't give our customers the experience that they want. But I think what we do well is when we know that something is wrong, there is very little ego. You go back, you understand the RCA, you change formula, you try different things, you use the org principles that we went on to establish. I remember that is one thing that I brought to the leadership team, saying that, we absolutely require org principles and values. And along with, our head of HR that time and Shrikant, the three of us literally wrote down what those values were. And most of those values are still part of the org principles. We have 6 org principles. And I can safely say that a lot of it was inspired by Amazon.
Nice. Very neat.
So the operating stuff of, empathy, customer obsession, insist on high standards, frugality, collaboration. And interestingly, you spoke about governance at some point. Even in governance, I feel that having a strong set of org principles, many of which are in conflict with each other, is very important. It can't all be heading north. For me, insist on high standard and empathy are at loggerheads with each other.
Interesting.
Sometimes it can be. Customer centricity and frugality can often be at loggerheads with each other. You only want to save, but are you cutting corners and delivering to the customer? Those are the things that, and it's easy to write them down, but I think those 4 years from 2016 to 2020 is when all of us got that MBA class that we had not got. Learn how to build and, be humble, suck it up, go work, figure out what needs to be done. And I think that's also when a lot of good people came and joined us, because I think they also realized that, this is not going to be a company that's suddenly going to go from, 100 million valuation to, even though we would have loved it, to a $10 billion valuation. This is going to happen over a period of time. You have to build for the future. You have to do the bricks one by one. And I guess that's what those 4 years were.
I think also it's that kind of business, right? So I think you were the very first guys to really go very, 1 foot front with offline, omni-channel and ops heavy, raising money for that. Of course, you and your space, obviously, but this I would not call would be one of the sexy, industries that VCs were, at loggerheads to invest in. But to take something like that up and to build a business of the scale that you have built itself takes a massive amount of conviction, right? So we get all of that now in terms of how your journey has been. So when did that sort of transition from being the core team member to becoming
2016.
the co-founder? And how did that happen?
I think 2016, when we were making changes to the leadership team, and we decided that we just have to reset not just the org but the way we are doing the operating team. Shrikant felt that I should take up the business part of the company, and my colleague that time who was heading product, his name was Vivek Sitaraman, he was also an ex-entrepreneur, that he takes up the tech part, and sort of the three of us kind of looked at building this. We had our head of HR, like I've mentioned, Kalpana. She was looking at the people aspect, really the sort of soul of the company, and that's how we started. That's where the conversation sort of moved. So I took over as chief business officer then, which essentially meant that took over marketing and running the business teams across the different cities, plus some of the other functional roles like category, etc., category design, etc., etc. So bundle them, I think, and over the next 4 years, that's basically how we ran. In 2020, when COVID hit, I think was the next big metamorphosis for us. We were probably the only interiors company in the country that grew all through COVID.
Wow.
We grew.
That's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And interior company, you're talking about COVID, seclusion, nobody else allowed in the house, and you were growing during COVID.
We were growing during COVID because what we had. So just going back to sort of 2020, March 25th, Modi ji announced lockdown. In a couple of weeks, we had vacated all our offices. Not even one seat was sort of there. All offices vacated. Our experience centers were shut down because of COVID restrictions. Right. Factories could operate only on certain hours. Customers could not leave their houses. So the question was, are you going to be at zero order book for the month? We have a product called Spacecraft. It's a virtual design and collaboration platform. We built it completely in-house. It's really one of the most advanced design softwares now in the world, which does home designing, etc. We had a feature in it which we had built for virtual meetings, which we were hardly using. Like people would just typically meet in person. We trained, I think, roughly 650 to 700 designers on using the virtual meeting functionality on Spacecraft over a 1.5 week period. Nice. And we started doing virtual consultations with customers who were sitting at home, who anyway did not have anything much to do.
Right.
But now they could focus on being able to design their houses because they had the floor plans available. They had everything with them.
They were spending maximum amount of time in their homes. So wow, that is actually such a beautiful insight.
These designers, some of the designers had gone back to their hometowns. So a designer sitting in Patna or a designer sitting in Nagpur was now doing design consultations for a customer here in Bangalore, because there was no alternative of going out. We actually did roughly 60 crores of business in those 3 months of April, May and June.
Wow.
And as I said, we grew about 17% that year despite all the lockdowns. So those were some of the things that, it's a little bit of coincidence also. I think that plays in, a little bit of luck. But because if we had not created that virtual design plugin that time, it would have taken us 3 to 6 months to build that.
Right.
But it was ready. It was around. Somebody had the right idea. Let's go and do this. Went and did that. So we grew through COVID. It was not an easy 2 years because there were so many people of our colleagues whose, family members, close and distant ones, became very unwell. Some of them lost family members. So it was a very hard sort of period for the HomeLane team. But I feel sometimes when you're going through a lot of personal hardships, it really helps to have some professional wins, right, and vice versa.
Right.
If you're not having too many professional wins, you need your personal life to take over and make sure that you're stable and you're mentally fit to be able to do what you really want. I think that maybe HomeLane had a little bit of a role to play in that as well for a lot of people, because I remember a lot of people who came back and said that, it was a tough 2 years, but we really enjoyed it. And it was something that kept us motivated.
I think that says something about the culture that you guys strive to build. especially during the whole 2016 sort of rejig.
Yeah.
4 years down, the most challenging period for the entire world, and for a home interior company to thrive. And like you said, for a lot of things to come together to make
Right.
that happen. Yes, agreed. And then for you to hear this, I think, from your employees,
Right.
especially to say that, okay, these 2 years have been the most challenging, but also the most fruitful.
Rewarding and
fruitful. It should be a big takeaway as it is, But yeah, you moved into CBO role and
2020, I think, so what happened was Shrikant came with this offer saying, hey, you know what? And our conversations are also quite funny. They're on things that are very important, they're very quick.
Okay.
On things that are not very important, they can go over like long drinks. Like, you know what, spoke to the board and feel that, you should actually come on as a co-founder and join us. I was already on the board before that. So I think it was just very, very sort of generous of him and the board to sort of think about doing something like that. It felt very good. I still tell everyone that I don't think I would have joined HomeLane if I did not feel like a co-founder. But I think it really adds to, I think it re-emphasizes some of the importance that you would typically have, and it re-emphasizes the fact that you're valued by the board.
Of course, that has to be part of the journey. Otherwise, exactly. I don't think, forget being elevated to co-founder, you wouldn't have stayed as long as you did.
I wouldn't
if
have.
That wasn't given. So for a lot of people don't know what it means to actually join a company, a startup early on, and what does it mean to be called the co-founder, let's say 7-8 years from then. What does it mean, and what is the shift? Both mentally, and if you can talk about probably, is there a compensation shift? What changes?
Yeah, compensation definitely changes. It comes down significantly. You're a co-founder now. You can't. that I'm quite clear about. No, I'm not joking. I think it comes with two things. Number one, it does come, frankly, short-term bragging rights. I'll be honest. But second, I think it comes with a renewed sense of responsibility that you need to have. Because what really changes in your life? There might be conversations around, changes in ownership that you have. For example, there could be a cap up that you're doing because clearly there is a decision that the board is taking for you to stay on and run the journey alongside the other co-founders. And I think that's an important thing to do. I mean, if I was on the board, the thinking would have been, hey, you know what? Would Shrikant working with Tanuj as a co-founder give us a slightly better chance of being able to build a great company? Maybe you would still be able to build a great company, but would it increase my chances? If yes, then this is worth doing.
Okay, so to break that down, what that means is taking a lesser comp, probably not always, but definitely a higher ownership.
Absolutely,
which is equity.
Absolutely,
better equity in the company.
Because otherwise, there is not. I mean, frankly, you have to figure out
of course,
what you are there for, and I think the ownership makes a big difference. So, I think even with the senior members on the team, we've always tried to see how we can sort of get as much ownership back to them as possible, because, and this is not about, obviously this has nothing to do with generosity. I think it's got to do with being sensible about your responsibility to shareholders. You're responsible for building a great company and generating returns for shareholders while building a great company for customers. And I'm not of the school of thought that, you build a company only for the sake of building a company. If you've built a company without raising any capital, then that thinking is absolutely all right. And maybe the next business that I build and I don't build it with somebody else's capital, I'll be very happy to say, I'm building, so don't come in my way, don't ask me any questions. But we have a fiduciary responsibility towards folks who have trusted us when we were almost out of money. We were or on the plan, and we need to be able to sort of deliver returns to shareholders. For that, we need to have a motivated leadership team. For that, the choice obviously for us has always been try and conserve cash and make sure that there is more ownership in the company. And we've also done a couple of rounds of secondary liquidity events, etc., which have been able to also demonstrate that this is not just paper money.
Right.
So it kind of all comes together. And just one more point on the co-founder piece, the responsibility, I think, also is that it comes with, it needs to cut both ways. It can't just be an increase in your ownership. It also means that when the going gets tough, you need to be able to take it as hard as you're getting. I mean, it cannot be that at that point, it's not a role of convenience.
Right.
That at some point one can be an executive only, and the other you can be an owner. And I don't think that's how it is usually, but I think that's something that is always there at the back of my mind, that there is a responsibility that I carry, and I need to be capable enough of being able to do that, just like Shrikant would, just like anybody else would. But I think at some point, it also required a lot more on Shrikant's part to be able to say, hey, you know what, there is somebody else who I can have alongside me,
right,
to be able to share
that is true.
The limelight with. And to me, I think that is what makes my decision of having wanted to partner with him many years back, I kind of go back and say, hey, you know what, out of the many decisions that might not have worked and this and that, that was a good decision to make, because and he's not been very different over the last 9 or 10 years. Like, I would still count on him as I would count him as a mentor. I would also count on him as a very close friend, but I would also count on him on somebody who will call a spade a spade. It's not like, if there is something which we have a disagreement on, we know that which are the decisions where he needs to have a final say and I need to have a final say. But I also know that, there are things where I absolutely will go with what he has to say, because, he's seen a few more things than I have.
Yeah, no, that actually speaks volumes about Shrikant and your partnership. Now, as your role of now co-founder with more responsibilities and with your recent acquisition of Design Cafe and the new round. So congratulations.
Thank you.
On both those fronts.
Thank you.
What's the future looking like for HomeLane?
It's incredible.
What do you have on your cards?
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Couple of things. One, the Design Cafe team is, one of the best teams we have interacted with in this space. They've built a really nice business. Their values and org principles are actually very closely aligned to the way we have built HomeLane. I think that makes a big difference. They have built it reasonably frugally. They have built it customer first. They cater to a set of customers. There's a little bit of an overlap between HomeLane and Design Cafe, but they also cater to customers who are slightly different in terms of, their requirements. They're slightly more high end in certain places, which is great.
It works for you. The segment is very different, especially after what you did after 16.
Correct.
Having that additional leverage. Better margins maybe with Design Cafe?
Similar margins.
Okay.
It's actually similar margins. So all that is there, and what we are able to bring is really the power of having built all the, I call it the pipe work, which is the tech, product, order management systems, some other policies, things that we probably would have started building 3-4 years back, 5 years back. We now feel that we'll be able to bring that to the Design Cafe team so that they are able to grow even faster than what they were growing. We feel that as a combined entity, anyway, this year we'll probably get past the 1,000 crore revenue number as a combined entity. We'll be turning in our first year of profit. It's going to be our 11th year, so 11 is lucky. I'm guessing at this point. Both have been cash profitable for a while now, so it's not like we are consuming too much cash. But we also feel that with this combined sort of team, we want to grow to more cities. We want to grow within more cities. We want to grow within the to more segments, like we have discussed in terms of Design Cafe. Over the next 2 or 3 years, today we deliver about 1,000 homes a month. Over the next 2 or 3 years, we should be delivering about 2 to 2.5 times that number of homes in the same sort of period. There is a lot for us to take back to customers in terms of product selection, in terms of technology, in terms of visualization, experience, and most, I think, in terms of giving them choice. That a customer who's getting a house handed over to her or him today in 3 months from now should now have the choice of going with a do-up or a HomeLane or a Design Cafe to be able to do up their house.
You have about 4 brands now, including Design Cafe. Can you name them?
So we have HomeLane, which is what we started with, Design Cafe, Do Up, which is the value focused brand. We have Cubico, which is our corporate interiors brand. We started that about a year and a half ago. It's doing really, really well. And we have another instant transformation brand called RapZap. RapZap is so we can do a completely different session on that. But essentially, we feel that a lot of homes, you have cabinetry, which is beginning to look a little bit shabby after many years. The laminates peeling off, or you have walls where things are peeling off, etc. So we've introduced these really high quality films that we can come in and over a 6 to 8 hour period, we can completely renew the look of your kitchens, of your cabinets, of your wardrobes with a whole range of finishes, close to 150, 200 different finishes.
Wow.
So these are rapid transformations, and we feel that, there will be a lot of occasions where customers, for example, there's a marriage in the house, or the kids grown up or whatever, you want to change the look of the room, you should be able to do it really fast and not wait for 45 days, which is what we typically take to do up an entire house.
Right. No, that's damn cool. So you're sort of in 70 odd cities now?
We are
25 cities.
We are in about 30 cities in total.
Okay.
And we have between 70 and 75 experience centers as of now. There are a couple of them which are actually opening up as well. We believe that we will probably take this up to the top 40, 45 cities over the next 2 years. But there is so much of scope still in the cities that we are currently in that a lot of our focus is on also just making sure that we deliver well in the cities that we are in, because it's still, if you put all the organized players put together in the country, we'll probably not have more than 8 to 9% market share. All the organized players put together.
Wow. That's a lot of room to grow as it is.
Yeah.
And right now, I think number 1 and number 2 are Livspace and you guys.
Yeah, so I think these are the 2 biggest players in the space for home interiors. We frankly think it's going to require 10 companies or even more like us to be able to go and cater to this market unless we grow fast enough and we grow well.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So in terms of where you're headed, which is probably an IPO eventually, probably a couple of years from now, what are you prioritizing as you scale? How much of that priority is going to go into growth versus profitability? Of course, we're expecting this year to be your first profitable year. But do you think that also means there will be some compromise on the kind of growth that you look to achieve?
It has to be a balance. I think it seems to be quite clear in the overall ecosystem as well. We feel that over the next 2 to 3 years, we will grow anywhere from 25 to 30% year on year. We'll be very happy with a 25% to 30% year on year growth, given that, we are in quite a few cities and there are quite a few things that we are doing. Our margins are playing out really, really well. We have been able to do a lot of value engineering to the process. We've been able to bring down a lot of the inefficiencies in the system with technology. We've been able to build slightly more premium products for customers, which is also helping us on margins. So I think the margin story is looking very strong. The growth story is looking good. I don't think we are going to compromise on margins for growth without having a real reason for it. We feel that the CAGR that we are talking about right now is actually important, but even more important is for us to be predictable in what we do. If we are predicting for the next 2 quarters, we want to make sure that we are in that 95% to 105% of it. And I think that to us is a priority more than, how do I have one stellar quarter and then the next quarter we are kind of, scrambling around trying to figure out what to do next.
And the last and most important piece, and with all the hue and cry, and rightly so probably in my opinion, around governance that most large companies, especially growth stage companies, have been facing. How do you look at that in HomeLane? And are there some specific measures that either you're taking as you go forward, as you're forward looking into an IPO probably 2 years from now? And what is your overall sense of this topic?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think I'm of the school of thought that as founders, you are pretty much the custodian of everything that happens in your business. There are a lot of people who will be around you to guide you, advise you, and you have to make sure that you have good people to guide you and advise you. But it's a crucible, and the test is really whether you are up to upholding the guidelines that are required. I know that I don't think any company has ever been perfect in everything that they've done, but I think there is that feedback loop, right? And when things go wrong, you need to have enough checks in place to make sure that you come back to it without completely getting derailed. A few things that we have done, and I'm sure a lot of companies also do, but I'll just put it out in any case. The first one is on people. From a people standpoint, the org principles that I spoke about have been a very integral part of how we've built the company. Like you said, these are not charts on our walls. These are our evaluations happen based on these org principles. People's performance evaluations happen based on whether they have displayed these org principles or whether they have not.
Interesting.
We, both Shrikant and I, bring up org principles when we are discussing strategy questions. Will it be right as far as the org principles are concerned or not? So some of it is I just sort of very deeply ingrained in the system, and we have to make sure that anybody who's coming in and joining us, they also sort of believe in the overall set that we have. Right. That's number one. Number two is the checks and balances from a people standpoint. We obviously have our regular whistleblower policies, and we have ombudswomen who can help figure out from a non-partial standpoint, in case there are any challenges you might face when you're at work, etc. Because we are 2,700 employees now. It's not a small organization anymore. So there are places where people might not feel great about something, and they need to have somebody to talk to. The idea is not to create a perfect environment. The idea is to create an environment where people are vocal about stuff that they believe in.
Makes sense. And I think in a world today where every conversation is around AI or Gen AI, where do you think the startup ecosystem or entrepreneurship is overall headed? Because HomeLane is, like I said, one of those companies that to me is a dhanda wrapped as a startup, right? In every sense. Sure. I don't know if I got that right, and if you'd hold me against.
No, not at all.
But I think it's a very large business today, right? What do you think in terms of where the world is headed today, where every conversation is about AI, and sort of what entrepreneurs or people who want to jump into entrepreneurship right now should be looking at? Go after the hype, or truly build companies that could last irrespective of whether it is part of the hype cycle or not?
Actually, you know my answer, but I'll still but I'll still talk about it a little bit. So three things. Number one, AI at HomeLane. We believe that it's not new. We've been using some forms of AI ML for the last 3 or 4 years now on our virtual design and collaboration platform Spacecraft. We use tools that have been built by other companies who have sort of AI enabled functionalities in them, and we clearly see the value that they bring. We do not see artificial intelligence or automation as a way of being able to rationalize people costs. We think they empower them to do better work, so that when we scale, we are able to do better work for customers. And obviously that we don't scale people as fast as we are scaling sort of clients. But we really feel that the people who are there at HomeLane have also figured out that, these are tools that are there to be able to help them do their roles better. And many of them are now involved in programming these tools so that they can serve them better. Give you one example. We do a lot of conversations with customers. Many of those conversations have, when you're talking about a home interiors project, you're really going into the nitty-gritties of how you live, what you do, this, that, etc. It's impossible for any human being or any designer to remember everything that's been said or interpreted.
Correct.
That's one easy place where we are beginning to use AI to be able to listen in after taking permissions, and really use that as building out a design brief, and then get our trained designers to be able to go and build things. It might not seem huge, but we have 600 designers across the country. We're delivering 1,000 homes a month.
Significant number, and 1,000 homes a month is not small scale.
So that's number one on AI at HomeLane. The second one is, in general, what we are seeing. I'm not necessarily technically well versed to be able to talk about, how things are going from a technology standpoint, but from an application standpoint, there seem to be a lot of companies who are building solutions and then looking for problems. The few who have, and by the way, if you're doing that at the model level, it's fine, because you're building something which is a stack or a foundation, and you expect people to come in and sort of take from it. But a lot of the wrappers, etc., that are being created, I think the question is, are they being created to solve a specific problem? We love looking at companies who are creating solutions for specific problems, because if you've been able to crack one or two problems, again, it goes back to the Swiss Army knife versus the single blade.
Right.
So really looking for applications which solve some problem, I think really help. The third point I wanted to share was, I don't see a world in the next 5 to 10 years where AI will not be all pervasive. It will be all pervasive. I think there is going to be a lot more. The way things are changing, I don't really know in 6 months what are the kind of technologies that will be available to us to be able to build a better company. But what I do know is it'll help us build a better company. It'll come with its own set of challenges. I think we all know what the challenges are. The question is going to be, at what point do you how do you solve for those?
Right.
But I think that's a horse that's already bolted. I don't think it's going to stop.
True. I think while this episode is being shot, we already have Elon Musk that has launched a robo taxi, a robot, and just yesterday been able to catch a 9-story building quite literally
with
from the air.
Is what we call it.
Yeah. So while all of that is happening, we can expect for technology to be a far more integral part of everything that we're doing. Yeah, this has been an incredible conversation.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Really, really appreciate it.
And all the best with everything that you're up to with the new acquisition. There are a lot of exciting times ahead.
Thank you.
The new fundraise, and about 2-3 years, hopefully IPO, and we'll look forward to that. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down and for doing this. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Awesome.
I love watching your podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much.